Hello, welcome to Behind the Showcase, your global fashion retail and supply chain podcast. Today, Monday, April 27th. Polyester prices spike as Hormuz attacks resume. Nike pulls a marathon ad and faces its deepest brand crisis in years. Lululemon's new CEO pick wipes out 13% of market cap in a day. And US retail's healthy spring numbers may be hiding something. I'm Sedat Sezer, breaking down the news and insight you need to start your day. Let's get started. Let me start with the number that's going to reshape a lot of sourcing conversation this week. Polyester accounts for roughly 60% of a global fiber production. In a modern footwear, somewhere between 60% and 17% of the materials are petrochemical in origin. That means when the Strait of Hormuz goes into a crisis mode, the cost hit doesn't stop at energy or freight, it lands directly in your fabric cost. Last week, Japan's Taijin Frontier announced an emergency price increase at least 20% on filament, staple fiber, and non-woven, and between 15% and 25% on textile products. Eastman applied a 20 cent per kilogram surcharge across all polyester and copolyester products, citing raw material, energy, and logistic cost overruns, and Coats Bangladesh signaled a similar move. If you are running synthetic heavy product lines, sportwear, outerwear, performance fabric, this is not a temporary blip you can absorb in one season. The cotton polyester cost differential is shifting in real time. For the first time in several quarters, cotton is starting to look relatively attractive again. ICE cotton futures closed last week nearly 79.45 cents per pound. And if Hormuz uncertainty continues, that spread narrows further. From where I sit, the sourcing teams that locked in forward contract on synthetic fibers before mid-April are now sitting in a meaningful cost advantages. Those who didn't are in active renegotiation right now, and the brands that passed cost pressure downstream to suppliers. That conversation is about to go the other direction. This connects directly to the freight picture, and the freight picture is not getting simpler. CGM's ultra-large container vessel was hit by a warning fire in the Strait of Hormuz over the weekend. The crew was unharmed, but the signal is unambiguous. On Friday, both the Trump administrations and Iran foreign minister publicly declared the strait was fully open, but Saturday attacks had resumed. Iran's military command announced the strait had returned to its previous state. The US Navy has maintained a naval blockade of Iranian ports and coastlines since April 13. Now, here is where it gets interesting for a rerouting standpoint. The Panama Canal is seeing a sharp surge in transit demand as Asia refiners divert crude oil sourcing from Gulf suppliers to US sources and use the Panama route to do it. Last-minute auction slot prices have gone from $135,000 to $140,000 pre-crisis to an average of $385,000 in March and April. Vessels without reservations are waiting an average of 5 days. Transatlantic spot rates jumped 15% this week to more than $2,300 per 40-foot container. Asia-Europe rates actually eased. Shanghai to Genoa fell 8% to slightly upper than $3,000, and Shanghai-Rotterdam dropped 4% on weak seasonal demand and excess capacity on that lane. What that tells you is this: the pain is not evenly distributed across lanes. If you are moving product from South Asia, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, toward Europe or the US East Coast, the rerouting map is particularly brutal right now. And Bangladesh is already dealing with a second layer of pressure. The Bangladesh Knitwear Manufacturer and Exporter Association this week reported that the load shedding is cutting factory capacity to 50 to 60% of a normal output. Specific industrial zones, Baluka, Siripur, Rajendrapur, are losing 2 to 3 hours of power per day. The association says energy costs have risen at least 20%, and their executive director put it plainly: if this isn't fixed before next season's orders arrive in May and June, export volumes drop. They estimate that at full capacity, Bangladesh could exceed $50 billion in annual apparel export revenue. Right now, they are running at half power. I've been watching this industry for over 25 years, and this combination, Hormuz disruption, cost inflations, and a key sourcing origin losing capacity, is exactly the kind of environment where buyers scramble. They start calling suppliers they haven't spoken to in 18 months. And the suppliers' positions for that call are the ones who've been investing speed in reliability in documentation. Be ready for that call. Now, let me shift to the brand side, because there are two significant stories this week that deserve serious attention. Nike pulled a marketing campaign the morning of Boston Marathon. The ad display in a store window read, "Runners welcome, walkers tolerated." The backlash was immediate. This is a company whose entire brand heritage was built on democratizing athletic aspirations. "Just do it" was never written for an elite. And now, at the moment when Nike most needs market recovery, the team opted for a message that managed to offer a sizable portion of their own addressable market. The brand context here matters. Nike stock has lost roughly 30% of its value year to date. Operating income was nearly halved. Brands like On Running, ASICS, and Ultra have been consistently out-messaging Nike on inclusivity while also taking share in performance categories. If you ask me, this isn't just a bad ad. It's a symptom of a brand searching for an identity it doesn't have clarity on yet. The strategic pivot towards serious runners might be directionally correct. That's a real market there, but the execution is relieving internal tension between where the brand wants to go and what its creativity teams are actually producing. That's a leadership problem, and it connects directly to the supplier side. When a brand of this scale is in identity crisis, volume decisions get unpredictable. Sourcing partners working with Nike need to be watching orders patterns very carefully right now. Same pattern, different market. Lululemon appointed Heidi O'Neill as new CEO this week. O'Neill comes from Nike, where she ran the direct customer business. The stock dropped 13% on the day of the announcement, closing $141. And the market concerns is twofold. First, she doesn't take the role for another 5 months, creating a leadership vacuum at a moment when Lululemon is in the middle of a product reset. Second, and more damaging, O'Neill's tenure overseeing Nike DTC operation coincided with that division's decline. Analysts are asking whether the person being brought in to fix the brand helped create the problem at the last one. That said, the existing leadership team stays in place, and Lululemon still has a relatively strong position in the premium athletic market. This is a question mark on execution speed, not on fundamentals. And then there is a broader retail signal. US retail sales grew 3.3% year over year in March, according to the Circana. Unit demand in general merchandise was up 1%. That reads healthy on the surface. But Circana's chief retail advisor put a flag on it. The headline is inflated by calendar shift, the Easter period, and the tax refund timing. High-income households' growth has been slowing since the end of 2025, and low to middle-income consumers are under real financial pressure. This is the pattern I'm watching closely. When fuel costs rise, when freight costs rise, when raw material costs rise, those pressures compound fastest at the lower end of the income bracket. The consumers who were already stretched are getting stretched further, and that's where the volume lives in mid-market apparel. UBS analysts are projecting more than 40,000 US store closures over the next 5 years, driven by AI-accelerated e-commerce growth. Online sales already account for more than 20% of total US retail, up from 10% in 2019. And that figure is projected to hit 27% by 2030. Department stores and boutique chains carry the highest risk. Off-price retailers are expected to keep growing. For anyone supplying mid-market US retail, this isn't a forecast to file away. It's a channel migration that's already underway. The physical store, as the primary volume driver, is losing ground faster than most planning cycles have priced in. One more signal worth noting before we close. Turkey's government announced this week that the corporate tax rate for manufacturing exporters will be cut from 20% to 9%. For general exporters, the rate drops to 14%. This is a structural cost reduction for an apparel and textile export base that already competes on lead time and proximity to European market. For sourcing teams benchmarking landed cost across Mediterranean origins, the math is shifting. The main question I want to leave you with today is, when polyester costs spike, freight lanes get disrupted, and your largest sourcing origins start losing production capacity, which parts of your supply chain have you actually stress tested, and which parts are you just assuming will hold? That's all for today's analysis. To make sure you never miss the insights behind the numbers, hit subscribe wherever you get your podcast. I'm Sedat Sezer. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow, and until then, stay ahead of the curve.